Today is Tuesday, September 7th. We have the latest about storm recovery across the country, including where President Biden will survey the damage today. Also, millions of Americans just lost unemployment benefits. We'll explain why. Plus, which country is the first in the world to accept Bitcoin as legal tender, and how a Marvel movie not only broke barriers, but also broke a box office record. Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in around 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. I'm Erica Mandy. Thanks so much for being here. You ready? Let's do this. Mississippi, Louisiana, and several states in the Northeast are still dealing with the aftermath of Hurricane Ida. But now those same areas are facing new severe weather threats. Louisiana and Mississippi have been getting more heavy rain, making recovery efforts even tougher. It's also so hot and humid, it feels like 95 to 100 degrees in those places, and yet hundreds of thousands of homes and businesses in Louisiana do not have the power that's needed to run their air conditioners. Power lines and trees were uprooted in Hurricane Ida, and that's also caused issues at water treatment plants, and many people are still without clean water. President Biden surveyed the damage in Louisiana on Friday, like damaged homes and flooded streets. He met with state and local officials and promised federal assistance. Well, today, he's headed to New Jersey and New York to look at how the same storm affected the Northeast. The storm was especially deadly in that part of the country, since people were trapped in their cars or basements during heavy rains and flash flooding. Overall, more than 60 people have died from Ida nationwide. Meanwhile, Hurricane Larry is now a Category 3 hurricane churning in the Atlantic, and it could strengthen to a Category 4, just like Ida was before it made landfall. But this one is not expected to actually hit the United States. Meteorologists say Larry will probably stay a few hundred miles away from the northeastern coast. Even so, it's expected to cause life-threatening surf, so people will probably be told to stay away from northeastern beaches in the next couple of days. One more note about hurricane recovery. The Coast Guard says it's now investigating hundreds of reports of oil spills in and along the Gulf of Mexico. It's been doing flyovers off the coast of Louisiana, looking for spills ever since Hurricane Ida hit. It's found some damaged pipelines and a leak from an offshore oil well. It's up to each oil company to fix these issues and clean up any spills. And some have already sent divers and technology out to respond. Nearly 90% of offshore oil production is still shut down in that area. The Taliban say they've now taken over the last area of Afghanistan that was not already in their control. They seized the Panjshir province over the weekend. This is pretty significant since the Taliban did not have control over that province when they last ruled back in the 1990s. It was home to a resistance group that at first held talks with the Taliban, hoping to be involved in the new Afghanistan government. But those talks did not make any progress. So Taliban fighters launched an attack and took the province by force over the weekend. Separately, women have staged protests in Afghanistan the last few days, demanding basic freedoms and rights. But in some cases, the Taliban have met them with violence. Several women say they were beaten by Taliban fighters. And at least one Afghan news network says the Taliban has been using tear gas and stun guns to break up the protests. In response, the Taliban said the protesters were deliberately trying to cause problems and that they only represent a small percentage of Afghanistan. The Taliban is still in talks about forming a new government. They've said women, in the meantime, should stay home, even though leaders have also said publicly that women will play a role in the new society. Also this past weekend, there have been some signs of normalcy. The United Nations was able to get humanitarian flights into Afghanistan, and the State Department helped evacuate 4 American citizens from the country. Now, those are the first confirmed evacuations since American troops left the Kabul airport a week ago. Today, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in Qatar. There, he's expected to review future evacuation efforts and develop an office that works like an Afghanistan embassy. Sadly, the U.S. Navy says 5 of its sailors died in a helicopter crash. They were doing what the Navy described as routine flight operations. But when they were about 60 miles off the coast of San Diego, the chopper crashed into the sea. A 6th sailor was rescued and taken to the hospital. Crews tried searching for the other 5, but were never able to find them. They range in age from 21 to 31 years old. The Navy is now investigating to figure out what caused the flight to go down. The number of new COVID-19 cases getting diagnosed each day in the United States is now more than 4 times what we saw on Labor Day last year. And that's even though this time around, 53% of the population has been fully vaccinated. Health officials blame the highly contagious Delta variant and fewer restrictions around the country, along with the millions of Americans who still have not gotten their shots. Sadly, the number of COVID-19 deaths reported each day is almost twice as high as this time last year. Hospitalizations are way up too, and some hospitals are getting so crowded, patients are being treated in the hallways and in the parking lots. The extra unemployment benefits millions of Americans have been getting during the pandemic finally expired over the weekend. We're talking about the extra weeks of assistance for people who have been unemployed for a long time, as well as benefits for so-called gig workers who don't typically get to apply for them. So about 7.5 million people are losing unemployment entirely. Another 3 million people are losing the extra $300 each week they've been getting from the federal government because of the pandemic, which comes on top of their state benefits. This all comes as hiring started slowing last month. The Labor Department says American employers added 235,000 jobs in August, but most economists and forecasters were expecting 3 times that number. For comparison, the economy expanded by about 1 million jobs in both June and July. Still, it is going in the right direction. The unemployment rate went from 5.4% to 5.2%, which is a new pandemic-era low. All right, we have more news just ahead, but first, this episode is brought to you by Ritual. You all know I love to cite research, and Ritual offers plenty of it. The company says more than 97% of women 19 to 50 years old are not getting enough vitamin D in their diet, and 95% are not getting their recommended daily intake of key omega-3s. So Ritual invested in research for their Essential for Women 18 Plus multivitamin, specifically designed to help fill nutrient gaps in the diets of women ages 18 and up. The results? In a study published in the scientific journal Frontiers in Nutrition, Ritual's Essential for Women 18 Plus multivitamin was shown to increase vitamin D levels by 43% and omega-3 DHA levels by 41% in 12 weeks. It's part of the reason I feel so great about taking my Ritual vitamins as part of my everyday. I'm currently taking the postnatal vitamin, and I love knowing I'm not only getting those extra nutrients, but also the ingredients are non-GMO, traceable, and vegan-friendly, so there's no shady stuff in there. And right now, Ritual is offering my listeners 10% off your first 3 months. Just visit ritual.com/newsworthy and turn healthy habits into a ritual. That's 10% off at ritual.com/newsworthy. It's a historic day for cryptocurrencies. Bitcoin is now legal tender in El Salvador. It's the first government to accept a digital currency as real money. Officials there say people can use Bitcoin to shop, pay taxes, and buy land. Hundreds of ATMs have been set up across the small country that people can use to buy Bitcoin or convert it to cash. Supporters say Bitcoin will boost El Salvador's economy and make it easier for family members living abroad to send money home. They also say Bitcoin will help more people participate in the economy. Right now, only about 30% of people there have a bank account. But critics argue the rollout has been rushed and confusing, and that most people and businesses are not ready for it. There are concerns about what will happen to the economy when Bitcoin's value drops, especially since cryptocurrencies are known for their volatility. And there are worries Bitcoin will be used for money laundering. People don't have to use it, though, since the US dollar is still legal in El Salvador. The Paralympics wrapped up in Tokyo over the weekend. Team USA added to the medal count on the final day of the competition. The men's wheelchair basketball team and the women's sitting volleyball team both defended their Paralympic titles and won gold medals. Over the last 2 weeks, American athletes set new world records in swimming and track and brought home the gold in events like the triathlon, archery, and cycling. Overall, Team USA came in 4th in the medal count with 104 total medals and 37 gold. China had the most medals, followed by Great Britain and Russia. All eyes now turn to the next Olympic Games, which is right around the corner. Beijing is hosting the Winter Olympics. The opening ceremony is planned for February 4th, and that is just 5 months from now. And of course, the Games will include fan-favorite sports like figure skating, snowboarding, and ice hockey. The Winter Paralympics begin in March. The first ever Marvel movie to feature an Asian American superhero crushed it at the box office this weekend. ShangChi and the Legend of the Ten Rings brought in more than $71 million in North America, plus another $56 million internationally. It's the second most successful movie released in the pandemic behind Black Widow. But ShangChi set a new record for all movies ever released during a Labor Day weekend. Traditionally, the holiday weekend is a slow one for theaters, as Americans usually try to get outside for the last days of summer. But ShangChi proved to be an exception. The superhero movie more than doubled the previous Labor Day box office record, which was set by the movie Halloween back in 2007. ShangChi was released only in theaters. It'll be on Disney Plus in a few weeks. Millions of Jewish people around the world are celebrating Rosh Hashanah this week, otherwise known as the Jewish New Year. The holiday started last night at sundown and lasts until sunset on Wednesday. Rosh Hashanah is one of the most sacred events on the Jewish calendar. The holiday is the start of a 10-day period of prayer, reflection, and repentance that leads up to Yom Kippur. Worshippers typically attend synagogues, and this year many are live streaming their services for anyone who cannot come in person. Other Rosh Hashanah customs include sounding the shofar, which is a ram's horn trumpet, and eating festive meals with symbolic foods. And That's it for the main news today, but now it's time for Trivia Tuesday, when we ask a different trivia question every week. But first, thanks to our sponsor, Rothy's. Let's start with the research. Rothy's surveyed thousands of customers, and the number one word used to describe their shoes is comfy. And yes, I would agree, Rothy's are stylish, they're sustainable, and they are actually comfortable. I used to dread wearing shoes for the first time, but with Rothy's, you never have to break them in. Instead, Rothy's shoes are comfortable and easy to wear right out of the box. I remember getting my first pair and being super impressed. And years later, I'm still wearing them. No wonder Pop Sugar named Rothy's one of the, quote, most comfortable and cute flats you'll never tire of wearing. And just like my shoes, Rothy's newly launched men's shoes have been tested to make sure they have the perfect fit, wash after wash. Step up your wardrobe with washable, sustainable, stylish shoes and bags from Rothy's. Head to rothys.com/newsworthy to find your new warm weather favorites today. That's ROTHYS, rothys.com/newsworthy. Okay, now back to Trivia Tuesday. Today's trivia question is, Iceland diverted roads to avoid disturbing communities of what? Find and follow us on Instagram @NewsworthyPod to play along. Just look for the quiz in our Instagram stories. As for last week's trivia question, who was the first woman to win a Nobel Prize? The answer is Marie Curie. The world-renowned scientist was awarded the Nobel Prize for Physics in 1903. She shared the award with her husband, Pierre Curie, for their work in radioactivity. She continued the research after her husband's death. And in 1911, the committee gave Curie a second Nobel Prize, this time in chemistry, for discovering 2 radioactive elements. Curie is the only woman to ever receive 2 Nobel Prizes. She's also the only person, man or woman, honored in 2 separate scientific fields. Today, she's remembered for her work developing X-ray machines. In total, 57 women have won Nobel Prizes since the award was created in the early 1900s. All right, thank you so much for turning to the Newsworthy to get your news each day. As always, we'll be back with more news to know tomorrow. Until then, have a great day.